Welcome to the Dark Reading News Desk. It's Terry Sweeney, contributing editor with Dark Reading. I'm joined now by Haiyan Song and Oliver Friedrichs of Splunk. Haiyan, Oliver, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Former President Barack Obama helped Splunk introduce your Data to Everything platform. Tell us a bit about how that went and what some of its capabilities are.
It's an amazing event in so many different ways, right? One is the company are going to the next level of bringing data to everything. Every decision, every action. And we used to start with just IT and security. I think now we're trying to really help the companies making better business decisions. It's really just perfect timing because the world is exploding from a data sort of usage perspective, and people need real-time decisions. I think with all of those coming together, it's a perfect thing for us to take our technology and apply it in a very wide and impactful way.
Let's drill down a bit into the Data to Everything platform. Talk about some of its useful capabilities for information security professionals.
Yeah, so one of the great things about Splunk is its ability to ingest pretty much any data source, right? If you look at traditional SIEM technologies, they rely on relational databases, meaning you have to know what the schema looks like in advance. You have to know what your data looks like in advance.
Okay.
The magic that we created with Splunk almost 15 years ago now is the ability to ingest any data, structured or unstructured, and then query it very, very rapidly using our SPL language. So you don't really have to know what the data is, meaning you don't have to know what question you want to ask in advance. And that's allowed us to build a very scalable platform that scales well beyond traditional SIEM technologies, ultimately turning us into the leading SIEM vendor in the market today.
Sounds like lots of great flexibility as well.
Absolutely, and it's ultimately useful for security use cases, IT use cases, IoT, really any type of log data or event data that's being generated. And as we know, there's a growing number of events increasing in velocity and volume every single day that our devices are generating.
Sure. So busy time for you guys. You've also just recently released a beta of your Mission Control product. Tell us about some of the capabilities there.
Sure. So Mission Control is a single work surface for SOC analysts. If you think today, we have 60, 70, 80 vendors typically in the large enterprise, and there are 600 to 700 vendors on the showroom floor here today, right?
Wow.
All well-intentioned. They're all solving
Right.
real problems.
Right.
Splunk really acts as that central nervous system or nerve center for those vendors in many cases for organizations. But that being said, we've acquired SOAR through the acquisition of Phantom. We've acquired UBA technology through the acquisition of Caspida, and obviously the core Splunk SIEM and enterprise products. What we're building now is a single work surface for the SOC. So the SOC analyst doesn't need to pivot between dozens of different tabs. They can do everything from one location and resolve a security event from start to finish, and also integrate SIEM and SOAR, which historically have been two completely different product categories that companies buy separately. We're putting those together as well.
All right. Shifting gears slightly, Splunk has also recently released some original research into how executives and business leaders make decisions. Nearly half still rely on their gut feeling or intuition. That's a pretty surprising number given the role of analytics in business decision making across the board. How do you see this impacting security strategy or just overall security posture?
Maybe I would sort of take that, just give the execs some credits for, even it's a gut feel. Usually the gut feel comes from, years of sort of synthesizing
Right.
information and experiences. I think the whole analytics approach to say, how can we really codify that gut feel in a way that is not that particular person, right? It's about scaling better decision making and processes. I think that's where we come to play, is how do we take the data to everything sort of platform and help customers and execs in this particular case. How do you have the framework, have the codified process to say how decisions gets made is because I need this contextual information. I'm referencing that particular case and I'm bringing this, connecting the dots together. Therefore, my gut tells me this is a better solution.
Right.
And this is very true to InfoSec as well, because a lot of the things you hear people say, well, InfoSec is about human intuition, try to chase certain things. again, the intuition was built on years of experience. So what we're trying to do is to use data to digitize that intuition and gut feel like development process.
Well, not to undercut history and experience, which are important,
Right.
but we've all been part of meetings where the decision maker has said, I know what the numbers are saying, but like I'm going my own way on this, and
Right.
overrides what the data show. How do you as vendors start to introduce maybe that's not the best approach here, like maybe we should take a fresh look at numbers? I mean, some version of that conversation.
Yeah.
Like, how do you start that?
Maybe I'll just talk from even our own business, right? You know, we have different beliefs, and because we are a function of where we came from and what makes sense. What we found that's really helpful is not necessarily argue at the point of the decision. There's two types of decisions. There's one-way doors, there's two-way doors.
Sure.
And if you're in a two-way door decision, maybe the better sort of discussion would be, what are the indicators, what are the KPIs we should be using as we execute on this particular plan, and when do we know we need to pivot? When do we know we need to? I think that's where the data brings a lot of value, right? In our security world, I always quote Oliver for talking about the OODA loop. It's about observe, orient, decide, and act. And data plays a big role because every step of the way you want to use data to help you observe, to help you orient, help you decide, and also assess the actions. I think that applies to business decisions as well.
Another interesting data point in your research was 40% of your sample citing this need for speed as the critical piece of decision making. Now, I think we all understand like it's important to make decisions quickly, but what does this imperative mean with regard to security and security management?
I think there's really two big areas. One is being able to get answers very, very rapidly. So if I ask a question of my data and all the data I'm collecting from all of my security devices, I want an answer within seconds or milliseconds so that I can then act on that information, right? If I'm dealing with an adversary that's in my environment, they're tampering with information, they may be modifying log files. So what I like to say is data gets stale very, very fast, but in security it gets stale almost immediately, right? Because
Sure.
we're dealing with a human actor who's changing things. And the second thing is speed of response. You know, if we look at typical response times for humans, it's 10 minutes best case, 11 hours worst case. By leveraging automation or SOAR technologies, we're able to reduce that down to a best case of 1 second, worst case of 10 minutes. So it's a exponential improvement in response time, which becomes very, very important as you want to investigate, hunt, and enrich, contain, and recover from threats even more rapidly, right, in this fast-paced environment.
Election security is in the news, obviously, as we wind up for November's election. What are your government customers telling you about their needs, their requirements, their worries, their concerns?
Well, let me start. They're definitely top of mind for all of them. We have federal and state, local government come and talk to us about this and implementing solutions to help them in two ways, right? One is to how do they monitor to make sure their entire infrastructure for election is up and running. And people talk about hacking and things, but the number one fundamental thing is, can we make sure the system is up and running and it's working, right? So that's one side. On the IT side, we're helping. On the cybersecurity side is really just understanding, you know, what could be the emerging threat and monitoring that. He actually have a lot of good stories about election security from years ago. You want to share some of that?
Yeah, you know, even some of the early research that we did in 2008, before this became such a big issue as it is today, there were attacks taking place. For example, one that people forget about, and in fact, I was at Black Hat in 2008 presenting on this, being interviewed by Dark Reading, is something as simple as typo squatting, right? So for example, imagine if I look at your keyboard and look at the keys around every key. If I mistype a key, what do I end up at? Well, at the time, a good example was if I mistype HillaryClinton.com, I'd end up at HillaryKlingon.com potentially because the G's right beside the T, right? But I can create a piece of code that generates all of the possible typos, and I end up with hundreds of variations of HillaryClinton.com. What happens if I register all of those, and then people are going to those websites and sending email to those domain names, right? There's so many variations of those types of attacks that can target the electoral system that, we have a lot of attack surface to to be concerned about, so people really need to be on the ball.
Yeah, sure. Haiyan and Oliver, thank you. Great insights in security management. We really appreciate you being part of Dark Reading News Desk today.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
We've been talking with Haiyan Song and Oliver Friedrichs from Splunk. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us.